Welcome to Military Miniatures Magazine. In this issue, we are going to prepare Games Workshop Tau Fire Warriors for painting, using a common modeling tool as a mold line remover. The tool we are using here is a high-quality dental tool by Hylin, but there are many similar tools produced by other companies. Dental tools like this one are typically used for precision wax sculpting of dental models for crowns, bridges, braces, etc. The tool is made of stainless steel and it has two differently shaped points, which we use for most of our basic sculpting work. Using the knife-shaped point of the tool, it is very easy to just scrape the mold line off the warrior's pulse rifle. The muzzle of the pulse rifle is more difficult to clean, because the mold line runs across, in between, and on either side of the two barrels. That's where the curved point of the Hylin tool allows us to get in between the barrels and simply pull the mold line out. The prominent mold line across the helmet is easy to scrape away with this tool, without also ruining the smooth surface of the plastic. To deal with the pesky mold line inside the panel line on this helmet, we turn the tool around and use the curved point instead. The inside edges of the curved point are sharp. They allow us to dig into this panel line and engrave it again perfectly, just like a sculptor would when he originally creates panel lines. Notice that tiny shavings of plastic are coming off as we engrave and straighten the panel line on this helmet, completely removing the mold line. Not only does this engraving take care of the mold line itself, in passing we also remove the ugly bump in the panel line, a noticeable bottleneck which formed on either side of the mold line. Now we're going to remove mold lines from the clothing, simply by pulling the curved point through the folds in the cloth. Sculptors typically use the curved outside edges of pointed tools like this one to create realistic folds in clothing. Not surprisingly, a similarly shaped tool will fit precisely into these folds and clean them of mold lines in one go. If we were to use a differently shaped tool for this purpose, the fold might be reshaped into the negative image of our needle file, or we will create small nicks and cuts with our scalpel. The mold line across the top of the pack is even more difficult to remove than the one across the muzzle of the pulse rifle. That's because we have 4 protrusions on the pack which need to be cleaned individually and with great care. The worst part is that the mold line runs into and across the 2 recesses formed by these protrusions. Where's the abrasive dental floss when you need it? Pulling the curved point through these recesses will clean the upper sides of the protrusions, but we also need to get well into the recesses with our knife-shaped point to remove the mold line. By comparison, scraping the sides of the pack is the fun part, and a just reward you will greatly enjoy. This Tau warrior is throwing a photon flash grenade, an interesting figure, but again pesky mold lines in difficult to access places. The shoulder armor plate has panel lines which are only partially engraved. They end short of the edge of the armor plate. To fix this, we pull the curved point of the tool through the panel line and engrave it all the way to the edge of the plate. Again, notice how much plastic material is welling up on the tool as we re-engrave the panel line on this armor plate. The edges of the newly engraved panel lines will be nicely beveled, which also makes them easier to paint. The muzzles of these double-barreled pulse rifles will all be drilled open eventually, but first the mold lines have to be removed. The Hylin tool is actually 2 tools in one, and it's easy to flip it around as we are working our way across these mold lines. Sometimes there are flat sections of plastic where the mold line can be scraped off with the knife-shaped point, and then there are folds, corners or recesses where the curved point is the better of the 2 tools. Notice that we've glued these Tau warriors to small bases made of polystyrene sheet from a yogurt cup. We will not be using the cheesy round pedestals these figures originally came with. For reasons of compatibility, the Tau Fire Warriors will be mounted on the same 0.4mm ferromagnetic bases we use for all our modern foot troops. These Tau Fire Warriors will join our growing ultra-modern and sci-fi forces for Nick Lunt's excellent Future Warriors Killzone wargame. Incidentally, while the Hylin tool is sharp enough to easily scrape mold lines off plastic miniatures, it is nowhere near as dangerous as a scalpel blade. The trick with removing mold lines successfully is not removing them entirely, but simply to break the distinct line in enough places so that the mold line appears to have been removed completely. This effect has a lot to do with the way our mind processes visual input, or more accurately, how our mind refrains from processing it. Scientific research confirms that we are virtually blind. We process a minuscule amount of the data stream our own eyes make available. If we processed any more than the bare minimum of data, our brain would die of energy depletion in just a few minutes. So when we think we are actually looking at and seeing something, what's really happening is that our brain grabs a few visual cues and then fills in a lot of blanks to create the image. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe is often credited to have observed that you only see what you know, but this realization is in fact much older. Returning to our mold lines, if the linear pattern is disrupted enough, if the mold line is broken in enough places, it will no longer be recognized as a mold line, even if traces of it were missed here and there. So, once the mold lines have been scraped off and the rifle barrels drilled open, we are ready to paint our Tau warriors. Thank you for watching. For more information, you're welcome to visit our website at miniatures.de.